Nope, that's not him. How you doing, everybody? It's Brother Ron, back with another episode of Brick by Brick. You know, these last few episodes, we've had a couple of people on that have been absolutely outstanding. You know, we had a few good brothers, few good sisters, but I think we might get one of the all-time favorites today. You know, nice weather, nice times, and why not have nice guests? Today with us, we have, you know, extraordinary singer, dancer, thespian, all of that good stuff. I don't want to build it up too much because, you know, she may get a big head. But bring it to the stage, brick by brick. Brother Ron presents the beautiful Takeema Davis. How are you, man?
I am fine. Thank you so much for asking.
Thank you for coming and joining us today.
Always a pleasure, anytime, anytime.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, we know each other
For quite some
for
time.
quite some time. And
In different capacities.
absolutely, absolutely. And for as long as I've known you, you've been a talented individual, you know, in the arts and things of that nature. So why don't you give the people a little short glimpse background of some of the artistic endeavors that you may have, they may know you from. How about that?
Well, I would consider myself a performing artist because I've been performing on stage in front of people since I can remember. I can say the beginning of my musicality began with dance. So I was a part of the Repertory Dance Company of East Harlem from probably third grade through high school. Had the opportunity to travel to France and perform in the French Bicentennial at the age of 12 years old. So that was huge, just to travel with a group of friends and teachers abroad at that age, coming from Harlem. That was major. But that also was before there were so many creative cuts in the programs in schools. And, you know, the cuts to that nature kind of stopped so many programs from prospering. But I was a product of an amazing program. The dance company was put together by a black man and a black woman, husband and wife. And what they did is they just auditioned young boys and girls around the city in Harlem schools just to snatch talent and create direction. I remember reflecting back on my years as a young dancer, realizing that I learned so much that my mother couldn't even teach me, just by the teachers and the camaraderie, understanding what teamwork is all about. Those things were implemented then.
And you said, what age was this?
Well, I auditioned in third grade.
Okay.
So
wow.
what are we talking about, 8, 9 maybe?
You've been doing this some time, for like the last 10 years, because you can't be more than 18, 19 years old.
Oh, you're so which would make you obviously about 20, right?
About 20, right. Y'all hear that, right? Okay, enough of the bull.
Right, right. But I like to start there. I mean, it began in music. I guess I wasn't a teenager. I was a teenager when I realized that I had some vocal abilities that were unique, for lack of a better word, and not even finding my confidence in my vocals, but it didn't stop me from singing. So
how was that transition from dance to singing?
Well, you know
was
what
it seamless?
I want to say yes. I want to say it was fairly seamless, but the dance was one part. The singing, getting a radio with my girlfriends and going to the laundry mat in the bottom of the building, taking the dryer out of the wall and plugging in the radio.
Wow.
And having our Mariah Carey or Mary J. Blige, whatever the song of choice was. So those were like awesome, awesome memories as I came up. I feel like there is a reason that I stayed within the realm which I stayed. I think I stayed in a very safe place in music and in dance, which worked for me as I grew. A couple of years after that, I started to tap into that acting bug. Actually, not true. I played Dorothy in The Wiz at 13. So the year after I came back from traveling to France,
Dancing.
dancing,
Then acting.
Boys Harbor Performing Arts on 106 Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
I was chosen to play Dorothy in The Wiz at their...
Little Diana Ross.
Yes. So all of these things kind of created and shaped, you know, my my everything, not just my art, but my womanhood, my person, my personality, my characteristics, my understanding of life. And these venues always also took me outside of my home base or the neighborhood per se.
Okay. Help broaden your horizons.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm dancing, I'm singing, I'm acting. As I gotten older, I wanted to do more, and I did a little bit more. I was in several plays in 2000. I sang in an alternative band just to step outside of my musical comfort zone.
Okay.
So I met an amazing brother through another brother who was looking for a vocalist. Was that you?
It very well could have
Could have
been.
been, yes.
Who knows?
Right. So, well, just to speak about that, I remember Craigslist. It was fairly new.
Okay.
Not always trusted, and I believe that you had found a gentleman looking for a vocalist, and you said, you know what, let's go together and kind of check him out. So that spawned to me performing in Atlanta and venues all around New York City and Brooklyn, performing with the band. So it was also a step outside. I believe whatever type of music I do, I believe it's soul because it comes from me, but I didn't want to pigeonhole myself to a particular genre. So I tapped into a little bit of everything, which helped.
Interesting. So, all right, we have the dance you, then we have the thespian you, then we have the singer you. Okay. Have you circled back around to the dance?
You know what? Very funny that you say that, but I have.
Okay.
Of all the types of dance, because I've dabbled in ballet as a youth, we did a show every year. So there was ballet, there was tap, there was modern, jazz, and then there was West African. And I identified more so with the West African dance than any other type of dance.
Okay.
I love them all, but I connected to the West African aspect. So as an adult, I saw on Facebook that my dance teacher, the one who taught me at 3 years old, well, through high school, she is still doing her thing. Big ups to Sister Jewel.
Yes, big up, Sister Jewel.
So she is teaching classes again.
Is that right?
Yes, and what that did was it opened up an amazing opportunity for me to take my daughter, who is 7 years old, to be taught by her.
7-year-old?
I have a 7-year-old little girl.
Wow.
Yes, yes.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Who would have thunk it?
Oh, boy.
One of these things happen.
Yes, they do. But just goodness all around. Jumping back into the dance, I was able to bring my little girl and kind of expose her, not just to the dance, but to the person who I feel taught me how to eat, how to, be more mindful of what I put in my body, because again, those things didn't come from my mom. They came from an outside source. So I have to give props and honor to the person and the people who fed me all that good food.
And one more time, what's the husband and wife's name?
The husband and wife of the actual company is different than the dance teacher.
Oh, is that right?
Absolutely. So the dance teacher, her name is Sister Jewel. The founders of the Repertory Dance Company of East Harlem is Diane.
Right, them.
Right.
Them.
And I'll get back with you on that one.
And we'll scroll it down underneath in a second.
Even though I'm just 20, the memory, the memories.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. It's coming. It's coming.
Okay, so we've talked about the artistic you, right?
Yes.
You've spoke about motherhood.
Absolutely.
All right. Are you a resident of the city?
I am. I consider myself to be the best of both worlds.
Explain this.
Bronx and Manhattan. Well, you know what? I went to school in Harlem since the first grade.
Okay.
But I lived in the Bronx till I was an adult, basically. So I like to consider myself having the best of that Bronx and then that Harlem, which created the swag of Takeema.
There you go. Here we are. That being said, how do you see the environment playing a shape in your dancing, in your acting, in your singing? Like, you spoke to the West African part of it, but how is the Bronx and Harlem infused into your artistry?
Well, I think it starts with family. I mean, although I've learned a lot from other people and organizations, it starts with family. So just kind of understanding who my family is and how they even migrated to the Bronx and where they were. Because my grandmother was originally sharecropper's daughter from North Carolina.
It sounds like, you remember George Jefferson? You say I was the son of a sharecropper? Pardon me.
So just understanding how my family came from North Carolina to New York. My grandmother, 1950, I believe she came to New York.
I think it was, 6 p.m.,
I
something
believe
like
she
that,
said
right?
So just in understanding the beginning, my grandmother was she was the I guess the station, because everyone who wanted to come to New York and experience that did. So
Okay.
my grandmother lived in the projects at 112th and Lenox,
Okay.
and then she moved to the Bronx, the very, very new River Park Towers, when it was just fabulous and new. And
It's not that way anymore?
I wouldn't say fabulous. That wouldn't be a word that I would use to describe it today. But with all that said, just the Bronx, just Harlem, just taking taxis when I was late for school from Harlem to the Bronx,
Right.
$7. I mean, the changes in the environment,
Right.
I feel like I've seen them both.
Okay.
As I take that very same ride from the Bronx to Harlem today, there is a major difference. I touched on one of the differences that saddens me, which is the lack of the creative programs in the school,
Okay.
because it was huge then. I know
Yes.
that the cuts have made that completely different. So the changes, they're prevalent.
Okay, so you just brought something up. Cuts. And we go, I get tangential sometimes.
Okay, it's
so
fine.
I'm going to take you on the trip with me. I know a few people that are dealing with these cuts in schools, and they're starting charter schools because they're saying to themselves, if they're going to take away the money from the public schools, let's see if we can find other avenues to get this money back. So they're opening charter schools. What's your thoughts on charter schools?
I consider myself to be a very new parent, although my daughter is 7. She's in the 2nd grade. And I can honestly tell you that I did not know that education would be such a difficult thing to just be a part of right now. Right now, I am thinking about homeschooling.
Okay.
To answer your question on the charter schools, my daughter went to a Catholic school for kindergarten, and then I made the choice, and I decided to try a particular charter school. To date, we are in our 2nd charter school. I don't believe that there will be a 3rd. What I'm understanding about the charter schools and the process is that although it is supposed to be designed to fit these children a little bit better than I guess the mass DOE, they're not using great material, for lack of a better term. If they're making the dress to fit the children, I don't think that they're not using hypoallergenic.
They're using rayon
They're
and polyester.
rayon and polyester. That's the
Gotcha.
way that I feel. I feel the first school was very numbers driven.
Okay.
And what I felt was it lacked the nurturing. I can go as far as to say that I've heard someone say that they felt that this particular school institution was robbing their child of their spirit. What I knew is that my daughter was not happy when I picked her up. Although her math was on point because they were banking, they were pumping that information and dropping it. She had Sunday to Saturday homework. So they were in there. She was on it academically, but she wasn't being fed. Her soul wasn't being fed.
Okay.
So what I did was I made the decision to move her to another charter school, which gave me the feeling that it was a more home type of situation. They had immersed her in another language. I joined the parent-teachers organization of this school because, again, feeling like a new parent, not totally understanding the system of the charter, but wanting to know and never wanting to just push my daughter through a door that I didn't know what was happening on the other side. So I was elected for a position and became very active, only to realize the only word, Brother Ron, that I could find is chaos. So the flip side, initially, I felt that nurturing aspect in this other place, but the work was hitting on nothing.
Wow.
So here I am, and as a parent, when you make bad decisions or decisions that you thought were good and then later you realize that they didn't bear the fruit that you thought that they did, I have a personal guilt, a parental guilt, I like to call it. Nothing that will hold me back from pushing forward, but it's a way for me to check myself. in making decisions moving forward. So I am right now having this guilt because I say the nurturing was there, the academics weren't there. The behavior, I realize that we are dealing with everyone's household when these children are in their schools.
Indeed.
And you and I both know, although life is never perfect, the challenges of these generations' children are different than the challenges that we had. We had challenges, but I don't think that we had the same type of challenges that they have, which is manifesting in a completely different way with them. So you have a huge number of children with behavioral issues. A huge number of children that I think they're just they're bored or they're not being tapped in the right area. We're not looking for what their gifts are. I felt like people looked at me. I took a test to get into my talented and gifted program, elementary school, but I still, because of the arts, it was a well-rounded, it was a full circle type of deal with me. I don't feel that way, and I feel like I am more involved than my parents were, but I am involved and I'm still not getting the feeling that I feel that I had.
Your return on investment.
I'm not getting the return on the investment. So it's leaving me to really have to analyze how I want to move forward with my daughter's education, knowing that this is the years where they lose their advantages.
Indeed. Indeed. I co-sign what you say. I do hold out a little hope for a charter school here and a charter school there.
Okay.
Just because of the people who are putting them out there for our children. So if the right person establishes it, it could be beneficial, but I've seen a lot of them go by the wayside, and it's a slippery slope because then the more we put into the charter schools, then the public schools are gonna die out. So now once these public schools die out and we have these charter schools that IBM, Toyota, or Pepsi, whoever puts their money behind it, now they're gonna be the ones in control of what our children learn. And we're not there yet, but Lord knows, we may be there soon. All right, so that's my tangent, pardon me. So let's go back. Now, music, dance,
Yes.
acting. Are there any other areas artistically that you want to get into? Maybe painting, drawing, writing. Is there anything else that you want to spread your wings and your muscles?
Well, I do. You know what is interesting? I have a doodle. You know, when people are doodling,
Yes.
I consider myself to be a little bit creative on pen and paper. Not to the words yet. I'm a writer as well, but in speaking about my doodle, I have a very interesting doodle, which
That word is killing me right now. She's saying doodle. I'm like, doodle, I don't know.
Doodle, which
Pardon
is
me, my bad.
which I'd like to think of it as a subconscious drawing because I'm on the phone or I'm into something else, usually on the phone, but I will, with the other part of whatever part of my brain, I'm creating what I consider to be small little masterpieces. So what I've decided to do is put some color to them and put them in my home, in my home as opposed to buying art. I have began to create my own home art.
Very interesting.
Along with my daughters, of course, because she's drawing and coloring. But it did take on a different feel when I actually sat back and looked, or someone would say, oh my goodness, did you do that? It's weird, but it also makes me want to understand what my subconscious rest is. Because if that's like, if my conscious is busy and my subconscious is drawing, it makes me want to really look at what is coming out
Try
when
to
I'm not.
decipher exactly what it is.
Absolutely. So as I learned myself at 20 years old,
Listen.
plus a little change.
Plus a little change, little pin here, there. Very interesting, very interesting.
And
Yes.
so that's the drawing part.
Okay.
I consider myself to be a writer. What I am doing right now is organizing my writing.
Okay.
So what do I mean by organizing my writing? I wasn't an everyday journal writer, but I am a pick up a book and write to myself kind of woman. It can be found going through my papers. I've written letters to my daughter. I'll put this the date and the time and kind of where I am with that, so she can read them when she's older. Right. So I have little pieces of me that I want to leave for her in writing, but I do want to get into writing movies. I want to get
Is that
into
right?
writing television or a web series of some sort. So
Let's
some,
do it.
yes, yes, yes. So even though I have my own premise, sometimes when I'm watching television, it is just to see the different types of formulas that are out there. I do have my own.
Doing research, basically.
Absolutely. A woman had written she wrote a story, actually. There was a story, I had a meeting with a couple of women. The woman wrote a story about maybe 10, 12 years ago. And this is because she just writes.
Okay.
But when I saw the story, I says, wow, this can be put into a playwright's form. It can be written as a screenplay,
Gotcha.
and that's kind of where I am right now. So with my own stuff and what I want to do, because I always tell my daughter, turn off the television, let's write our own show. Turn it off.
How about that?
Let's sit down, let's write our own show. It could even be this, or it could be something completely
Whatever
different.
you want.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just kind of get her used to understanding that someone sat down and wrote that. It started with she said this and he said that, and when they were in the store, and this is what, so just trying to expose her to that aspect as I exposed myself to it. I had a girlfriend of mine who took a screenwriting class. I didn't take the class, but she was so generous as to send me pages and pages of all of her notes and the teacher's notes and the writings. I have a couple of books that I started to get into just to understand all of the parts, protagonists, just to understand all of the parts of a really great story,
Right.
and what makes a story flow. So I guess that's another avenue of creativity that is not completely, come to fruition, but I definitely want to begin doing that. Another aspiration, since we're talking about writing, as a parent, I had my daughter not in my 20s, as I reveal truth. I I feel like my spirit has always been a mother naturey, nurturing kind of spirit to everyone that I know, even adults and children alike. And with that said, I have a lot of opinions and premises that I come from, and I can see myself not writing a self-help book, but creating maybe just a body of work that will evoke and provoke the thought processes of just womanhood and life and love, relationships, and self. I have this thing with self-help books. I feel like, oh, look into yourself and figure yourself out, but nobody's really telling you exactly what that is or what the first step of that is. Okay. So I just, there's so many little things that I am now kind to bring into fruition. I've had some challenges because I am also one of those people that has always maintained a full-time job. Okay. So I've always split myself into full-time job, have to take care of my bills, have to take care of my daughter, and then my creativity has always been like the second or third.
See, now you're confusing.
Well,
Because how can you have all of this, right? You have your mother side, you have your artistic side, and you educated because you went to school and I mean, how do you find time to juggle all these things?
well, you scared me because you said that I was confusing you. I don't want to confuse you. Was that the word? Not to confuse you, but this is how incredible women are. This is how incredible people are. Because I've yet to tap.
That's how incredible women are. You hear this? No doubt. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Well, I know that I've yet to tap into the full extent of queendom that is awaiting me.
Okay.
I feel that I am I am in the process of understanding all of the avenues. I have my philosophy of we don't know anything until we actually hit the age of 30. Like if we want to go on a tangent, one of my personal philosophies is that from 0 to 29, textbook says you go through the stages, adolescence, and how, what changes. As adolescents, you go from, how the world sees you as opposed to how you see the world. And, everything is kind of me as they grow. And then you get into your 20s and you finding your place, just understanding who you are, where you are, what you want to do. I have challenged young people to look at the people around them. Because you have this kind of woman and you have this kind of woman. Everyone's story is different, but where do you see yourself in that? Do you see yourself above that woman or below? Like, just to challenge yourself and where you see yourself in this life. Philosophy, when you're 30, you're just born. And I say that because in your 20s, you begin to decipher. I bumped into a friend of mine in the post office, and he made a joke. He says, "Have you used algebra since we've been in high school?" So,
Wow.
ha ha ha, but heck no. Maybe not in the form of school, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. So we know and we learn what we learn, but in our 20s, we begin to decipher how much of this information is really necessary. What should I have been learning? Which way am I going to go? What parts of me am I going to leave behind? What parts of me am I trying to sharpen, hone, make better? So my philosophy again is when you hit 30 is when you should kind of know what's necessary, what's
Next
not
time
necessary.
you bump into that guy in the post office,
Yes.
tell him you use algebra every day.
Well,
You was using algebra before you even learned algebra. But that being said, we don't, see how when you go to the supermarket, you use algebra.
Absolutely.
4x plus 3 equals. Well, if I'm going to get 4 dozens of eggs and they cost $1.89 a dozen, how much that's algebra.
Right.
But we don't look at it like that.
Not at all. But I would have learned that by going to the supermarket with my mother and not by
Exactly,
school.
not by
so
school.
him asking me that and me saying no, I totally understood what he meant. And he meant the n equals question mark. You know what I mean? So again, what is banking? Information just being dumped into us. We got to purge because you have to make room for what else. You have to make room for what else. So in my 30s, in our 30s, as we
Don't speak for all. Don't speak for us. All 30s. I'm in my 20s.
listen,
Or something like that.
something like that. I don't think they don't make 20-year-olds like you anymore.
They ain't never made 20-year-olds like me.
But just there's so much. I mean, life is so vast. It's so wonderful. Finding your place, understanding that people's perception are their reality, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. That's kind of where I am. I'm coming from a place. Meet you where you are to see where you are and kind of understand where we can be or where we can go.
Or where we can't be and where we can't go.
Absolutely.
There you go. And
Absolutely.
here we are. Wow, this has been very interesting. This whole conversation. All right, so we got on the artistic side.
A little bit.
A little bit on the mother's parenting side. A little bit on the education side.
Yes.
We touched Harlem and the Bronx. Anything else you want to talk about real briefly? Because I know I got something else in my mind, but I'm going to save that for a second. Before we get there, is anything else you want to speak on?
Well, you know what? Going back to the creative part and honing in on where my focus is right now, and my focus has become music again.
Okay.
My focus again has become music as I push for music to be number one and not number three.
Okay.
What all of the things that I have just laid out to you that are parts of me, that's my music. My music is the mothering, is the mentoring. My music is the dance, it is the fun, it is the serious, I think my music is going to be all-encompassing. I make jokes. And sometimes, you know what, I remember, I can tell you, I take you back. Just lyrics. I mean, I'm speaking about content. I remember
Well, you can't say it. You're going to have to sing it if you go say it.
Well, that too. I can do that for you.
There you go.
You know, that's no sweat.